1552 and 1553 saw Yoshiaki's conquests reach new heights. Several minor families were absorbed into his clan after being crushed in battle. And whenever the nobles had lost control, his men stepped in to fill the power vacuum. If there was no power vacuum to fill, he would make one, working with the eager Christian missionaries to force commoners into opening the doors to his armies. Now little remained of the once dominant Shimazu clan. Backed into a corner, they prepared for a showdown with the family that was winning the island's Cold War.
We have already lost. You've heard the talk on the streets. The people support that crazed demon Yoshiaki, for his holiness, ironically enough. We will face overwhelming odds. These last 2 nights I did not sleep, considering the merits of an honourable death in battle. Does such a thing exist when you fight your own people and puppets of external powers? I say this. The land deserves more than our blood. It deserves our sweat and our protection. We shall ride to all corners of the land before the trap is closed and inform the lords of what has happened. When they know the deception of the Otomo and the way they twist the knowledge of the foreigners to serve the very evil they keep warning us against, they will not sit idle. In this way, the Shimazu will live on. No banners will fly, but our revenge and the people's justice shall be had in full.
Hello and welcome back to Barbarian Masters, where after a long campaign of slowly weakening the Shimazu, we now have them in a very dangerous situation. All of their forces moved out and started marching into our territory. They didn't declare war, but they do have military access, so they're allowed to walk through our lands if they want. But this leaves them critically weak, of course. Now there is nothing in their only remaining province, and we can attack it with Yoshiaki, and Yoshishige's army, once he's back in it, is already in reinforcement range, so he doesn't have to do anything to take part in the fight. Taking out that province will eliminate the Shimazu clan, so I won't have to worry about those armies at all if we take the castle. There's only one thing stopping me, and that is honour. It would be seen as an infraction against our military access treaty to attack them while they were using it, but that's not going to be enough to make us pass up this massive opportunity to completely avoid fighting those two powerful armies. We declare war on them at last. We step in to attack what is now their capital. They just have a small garrison, and with two armies attacking at once, that means nothing. We'll be taking this castle for pretty much no losses, and those no losses will be in exchange for 2 armies worth of losses on the Shimazu side. They are gone. They are forced to disband. You can only keep the armies you have at the end of the campaign if they're in the final region that you have. That gives you a chance to take it back, but if you're outside of the region, you're forced to disband. The clan is destroyed and the territory is now ours. Kyushu is virtually all under our control, and the remaining parts are controlled by our vassals, allies, or long-term peaceful companions at the very least. So a very stable situation, or so I thought. In that very end turn sequence, the Aso clan, who controlled the middle of Kyushu, declare war on me, immediately marching out with a big army. This was the clan I least expected to do anything against me. They were the only clan on very friendly level relations. Every other clan is either hostile or unfriendly, so I thought these guys were with me here, and since they controlled such a critical bit of territory, I was glad for it. But now we face war with them. I won't risk losing any other allies over this, since I think we can take them down on our own, but they do have us up against the wall to start with. They're taking us by surprise, and they'll be able to take some of our territory by the looks of things. They are also joined by the Psyche clan. We haven't interacted with these guys at all. They're a pretty big clan over near the capital. We've seen some of their ships going past at various points, but I'm not totally sure why they decided to get involved in this. Probably just because we're becoming so dishonourable that clans just won't tolerate our existence anymore. So I came here to check where the Psycho were. They're over there, just on the edge of the peninsula, the Key Peninsula. So that's not a bad position for a naval invasion. They can come right across southern Shikoku Island to hit us in southern Kyushu pretty quickly. So we do need to keep that in mind. If they show up, we'll be in trouble, but we're going to focus on the more immediate problem, and that is the Aso clan. With all of our forces down here at the bottom of the island, the top of the island is going to be theirs to take. We need to rush up as soon as possible. Yoshiaki will take his forces there right now, teaming up with a few more samurai recruited in Satsuma with superior weapons and armor, which is nice. Now, there was one thing I could do against the Aso clan. I've got one unit in North Higo. It's some cavalry. And what I can do here is just rush them around the back of the enemy's army. There's no point leaving them in the castle because they'll die, of course. So by putting them behind the enemy, I can either escape with them to join our main force and take revenge, or draw the enemy towards them so they try and do a field battle against my cav rather than taking the castle, because that's easier and that will just buy time, distract them. However, as we wait to see if that's going to work, we've got plenty more enemies lining up at the gates.
Lords of Japan, I write to you with urgent news and an urgent request on which your honor surely depends. Hundreds of our ancient fiefs, lands held by we, the masters of these islands, the Japanese, now lie under the heel of barbarian cultists. Their unprovable claims, their backward mannerisms, and rude bearing are only the beginning of it. Through careful collaboration with Lord Otomo Yoshiaki, they have conducted a thorough campaign of kidnapping, of bribery, and of sabotage here on Kyushu. Their goal? The joining of as many people as possible to their artificial faith. That's what many of you will have heard of. But have you heard of the thousands of men, women, and children they steal from prison camps? Of those they steal from our fields and farms? Of those they take in the night below the shadows of our walls? Stealing is not the right term, for all they do is legal. Why? Because Yoshiaki and his cronies are in on the deal. They profit from the enslavement of their people, and use that profit to spread a reign of terror to all they see. We would have been next, but the time for silence is over. We shall make a stand. The Aso will fight this evil. As virtuous gentlemen, I need not ask you to do the same, for now that you know the truth of the situation, you will see the correct course.
Those cavalrymen do successfully attract the attention of the Aso main force. It attacks them and I move away, and it chases them yet further to try and finish them off. So this is a nice waste of their military resources. Taking a whole army to bring down one company is going to prevent them, of course, from taking our territory. That company is in trouble and it disappears right away, so that's a shame. That was a pretty good cav unit, but this might be a pretty worthy sacrifice, losing just one unit to have several more turns potentially of income from that region. So as we also saw, we're now at war with a lot more people. We had this mini realm divide where loads of clans started declaring war on us, and the main problem that comes from this right away is naval. There are boats from all sorts of clans all over the place near Kyushu, and our trade routes are very vulnerable right now. One of the key enemies coming in was the Amako. You can see them on the map on the top right. They control the grey strip on the top of Honshu nearest to us, and they're probably the most likely clan to do a naval invasion against us because they're not very far away. So I'm taking Yoshishige up via ship to the top of Kyushu to try and defend against that. In the Amako turn, they sent a couple of Bokoboyas to attack a pair of waiting trade ships I had near a node beside their territory, just waiting to see if it ever became free so I could take it. Now that was potentially a winnable fight. Trade ships can beat Bokoboyas if they manage to board them because they have a much larger crew, but I didn't even try to do it for some reason, and thinking back I'm not sure why. That would have been a possibly winnable fight, not that it particularly matters since the ships weren't doing anything. some more opponents coming in. Lots of the opponents joining us in this mini realm divide are just the one region factions from around the nation, so they're unlikely to do anything, but because of the difficulty level, even a one region faction can field 1 to 2 stacks worth of troops and a navy, so they may invade us. Now, the Saika have taken a pretty big navy to blockade our main trade ports, and now we're in big financial trouble. They've got another navy looking like it's going to head north. They might be able to blockade some more of my ports. Not very nice. We need to bring our main fleet with our medium bunets and the black ship up to break that blockade. On the way, we'll just get rid of one of the ships that's hanging around. There were more ships I could have attacked there, but we don't want to waste our movement points. We need to get into the action. I want to break the blockade and then potentially just leave Yoshiaki near our capital, ready to react to any naval invasions. On the west side of the island, I'm putting together a little defensive fleet out of scraps of things that aren't doing much right now. Lots of trade ships in there, since we don't have any real military ships located on this side of the island. The plan is to block the main passage towards our 2 trade nodes from the Amako fleet, currently going across the north coast of Kyushu. Yoshiaki will just chase after that ASO main force. We want to try and engage it, and there's actually a chance here that the army will come to attack us rather than the settlement, because we're close enough. They can probably see us there, and Yoshiaki is a pretty valuable target, so they might try and force a decisive engagement before taking our territory, which would be perfect for us. But before we look at that, the Amako fleet that I mentioned does come in to attack the fleet I just set up specifically to stop them getting in, so I'm going to have to fight this one to see if my efforts are going to be successful. We've got 5 Kaboyas, they've got 8, but we also have 5 trade ships, and as I said, the trade ships have a bigger crew than a bow Kaboya, so if you can board the enemy, you have a pretty good chance of taking them down. You can only really do it once because you'll lose most of the crew in the process, but it's possible to work with what we've got here, so we're going to give this one a go. My plan was to put all of my Boka boys in the center and have most of the trade ships come around the edges, so the enemy would get distracted by having archery duels with my Boka boys, and we would then be able to catch them and board them. That was the plan at least, and we'll see how it goes. Problem number 1 was that the enemy's Boka boys are going to beat mine. You can see they're quickly snaking around to hit the flank of my line, so lots of their guys will be shooting at just a few of ours, and this happens to be our leading ship as well, so we don't want to lose it. But the actual main problem was this. I completely forgot that trade ships almost can't move, especially when they're sailing into the wind. In fact, when they're into the wind, they actually can't move, they get stuck. So this meant my plan to board these guys as they went past just didn't really work. To the south, there were 2 Boka boys who broke off from the enemy's main group, and I sent 2 trade ships to catch them, but even with the wind, we're still so slow that the enemy were just escaping, and things weren't really working as I hoped. I did manage to catch one in the middle of the fray where I had a reserve trade ship, so there we're going to get things going, and once you do get the boarding action started, it does go as desired. You'll lose a decent amount of crew, but it is enough to rout these enemy ships and cause them to surrender, in fact. So that's 1 down, just need to get the rest somehow. I was lucky enough to get one of them into a boarding action here on the southern side. You can see the ropes pulling them in. Now they can't escape, and our superior crew will once again have a chance to take them down. It's not actually guaranteed, these boarding actions. I have seen them fail because the trade ship has low morale, so the losses you take in these boarding actions can make them rout before they actually complete it, even though they almost always will win if it goes on long enough. Still really struggling with our attacks from the north. You can see we've got this one badass guy who's just standing there letting the arrows fall around him. He is not intimidated by the enemy presence at all, and he's also got his friend there trying to reel in the enemy ship with a rope, but it's just not really happening by the looks of things. We are damaging the enemy just with our own archery fire as well, so some of the enemies are considering routing actually at this point, even without the boarding actions. We're doing okay with the Kaboya fight eventually as well. Here we've got their admiral surrounded by 3 of our boats, so we can start cutting down his crew. That will make life easier if we can get that ship to rout, because it gives a morale debuff to the other ones, and they're not going to last long in that particular position, so that went well. Back up on the north, things just came to an end. The enemy surrendered. We didn't get our boarding actions going, but we didn't need them, so we've still got these trade ships ready to use. Not that they're going to be of any use. Really, the battle is coming to an end just because the enemy's losses have been too severe. Of course, our loss is pretty strong as well, but the archery fights have whittled the enemy down enough that now all of our surviving crew outmatches theirs on the balance bar, so that's debuffing them nice and easily, and they surrender, all the remaining ships surrender, I should say. A close victory in the end. Plenty of losses on our side, but we've retained our position and stopped the enemy from getting towards our trade nodes. Only one full ship lost on our side, not sure where that was in the battle there, but interestingly we captured tons of Bokaboya, so our fleet almost doubles in size. We've now got all of these almost uncrewed ships that we can potentially use. The Aso army does go towards Yoshiaki there, so we're going to avoid losing our settlement for now. So overall that last turn all went just about as good as it could have gone, and we're not quite in the worst situation ever. Now it's our chance to fight back. Do not get me wrong, this is a vessel of splendour and strength, worthy to fly my family's crest. But the costs you incur seem very high for what I've seen of it. This ship is a great yet complex creature, Lord. Many expensive craftsmen are needed to ensure it does not degrade. Few exist who have learned the Nanban techniques. It's actually the absence of Nanban that I was concerned with. Your fleet is entirely crewed by Japanese, even at the oars, is it not? That is correct, Lord. I understand that to use foreign slaves is the common practice. A Japanese slave sells for twice as much. Why do you ignore this? My lord, there are several factors to consider. Our ships, being fewer in number than the combined total of our enemies, must operate with heightened efficiency at all times. It is cheaper, is it not, to procure fine crews for one ship than common crews for two, and more desirable in the heat of battle. Japanese slaves understand their orders and understand their stake in the war they fight. There is no comparing them to Chinese or Korean oarsmen, I have found. Additionally, when it comes to the Black Ship, it is a matter of clan pride that no Nanban be present on this vessel. It shows our superiority to them. Therefore, I reasoned the costs of acquiring crews locally to be worthy of payment as investment in future victories and prestige. Yes, well that was quite a mouthful, wasn't it? I know what you were doing. No, I am more learned than my father, and more so than you, I dare say. For the sake of the work you have done, and father's trust in you, I will not raise the matter with the clan, but you are to pay for your sympathy out of your own pocket. Understood? Yes, Lord, I understand. Thank you, Lord. It's time to break this blockade. We need our money back, and the Black Ship will hopefully do it for us. We've got these medium bunes as well, which outclass the enemy's Bokaboyas. A balanced engagement, apparently, probably because the crew on the Black Ship is so low that it's not counting for very much. But as long as we have enough crew to man a couple of the guns, we can start doing the business. There we go, easily destroying that first enemy Bokaboya. You might notice, if you're looking very carefully in this battle, that I've actually gained quite a few crew members between the campaign screen and now, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Let's focus on the battle for now. One of the interesting things about the Black Ship is that so much of the crew is actually inside the ship that when the AI tries to target it, a lot of the time they just shoot the hull of the ship with the arrows, which doesn't do anything. There are a few guys on deck firing with the matchlocks. They're going to be vulnerable, but not very vulnerable still, and the enemy super vulnerable to our counter-attacks, of course. These guys trying to dodge away from the Black Ship, go right underneath our medium bunes. They've got tons of archers firing from a heightened position. They're going to have an easy time thinning the enemy out, and I've done a similar thing on the other side of the Black Ship, effectively preventing the enemy from escaping from our cannon fire without at least getting some damage from the medium bunes, and they just crash into the medium bunes a lot of the time, which slows them down, so that's nice. I'm trying to turn the ship to get our cannons ready to fire again, and the enemy continuing their arrow bombardment. I guess if they hit us with enough, we'll sink. And speaking of sinking, down they go. Someone in the comments and some people on forums that I was reading managed to allow me to work out that sinking actually doesn't even work in vanilla Shogun 2 anymore, and that's why the Black Ship was so ineffective the previous times I tried to use it. essentially because of Fall of the Samurai. Fall of the Samurai added in armoured ships. So basically it meant because all of the shots in Vanilla Shogun 2 weren't technically armour piercing anymore, they stopped going through hulls and even unarmoured hulls. So you had to go back in and reset all of the cannon projectiles to be armor piercing. Now they can go through wood, which is very nice, and that allows us to potentially sink these bokoboyas with a few shots. That's going to make our life much easier and hopefully make the black ship worth it in the long run throughout this campaign. So as you can see, it's pretty effective. We sink a couple of those koboyas and the others are taking a lot of damage as well. They're probably risking the same thing, and a lot of the crews have been killed by the fire from our medium bunes. The battle rapidly comes to an end in a decisive victory. It seems we might now be able to get our money's worth out of this black ship. It's extremely expensive. It costs the same amount as a whole fleet, but hopefully it will now be even more powerful than a whole fleet. We shall see. Now here is the battle results from the first time I did that fight. That was actually my second attempt. The first time the black ship apparently was destroyed. It went exactly the same as what we just saw, but the black ship was deleted after the battle, and I was very annoyed by this. I had to go back and replay a decent amount of the campaign so that I didn't auto-resolve as much, so I still have some of my crew. But even then, I actually lost about 100 crew members at the end of the battle somehow, and it's actually because of one of Shogun 2's features that I really like, which is screwing me over here, and that is at the end of the battle, it auto-resolves what's left of the fight, and that usually means the enemy army or navy is wiped out, and you don't have to run around the map chasing it down like in some of the later games. But apparently that annoying tendency for the auto-resolve to hate the black ship comes in there, and you lose 100 crew chasing down routing ships somehow. So that's pretty bad. We're going to have to avoid ending battles prematurely when it comes to naval fights with the black ship, at least. So Yoshishige is going to have his forces put ashore, and we'll just rush to go and attack the Aso clan right now while we wait for a potential invasion from any of our new enemies. And Yoshiaki is going to be doing action against the Aso as well. We need to do this battle that's been set up for us. We'll take down their main force if we can, and at least be glad that whatever's happening here, we've avoided losing territory to the Aso so far, which is pretty miraculous considering the start they had in this little war. Right off the bat, I realised things were going to be a bit harder than I thought here, because the enemy's position is really good. They're on these raised cliffs that blocks direct line of sight on our approach. That means that we can't use our matchlocks and our skirmish advantage in general to whittle down the enemy before the fight. We're going to have to start doing more fancy things. You can see I'm splitting the army up into two groups now. We're going to have to maneuver to try and take away the enemy's supreme positional advantage. Given the level of threat we face, I suspect that breaking the army up will be required. Each group will need adequate leadership. That's the main limitation. At least I have an easy option with you, though. You wish me to command an army? You'll have to act more intelligent than that. Oh, Lord, I'm just surprised. Apologies, this is a great honor. Is it? Yes, Lord, of course. It will take bravery and skill. Bravery to face down the entire nation, and skill to keep them from stealing our advantage. Do you know what I'm saying? Exactly. You can rely on me, my lord. Good. Well then, let's start now, shall we? Take the guns and the heavy troops, and make a frontal assault. Show me what you've learned. So after leaving some troops on the plains to keep the enemy distracted, Yoshiaki took most of the army around to the enemy's flank to advance through these hills and forests where we won't have so much of an uphill fight. The enemy responded by sending one of their generals out to try and stop us. Not the best of moves, because he's going to run right into our spear line. The rest of the guys will continue to set up. The enemy did deploy archers to fire at my guys, so we need to accelerate the process. The enemy does have a local skirmish advantage, so getting melees going would be nice. They also sent a general to attack the cavalry I had forming up behind their army, and again, not an ideal move because these guys are also spear troops, so they'll have an advantage against that general. It will be a hard fight, but we should be able to win that in the end. Our main line advanced so quickly that we actually ended up catching some of the enemy's archers into melee, so that was pretty nice. I wanted to advance forwards enough so that it would be easy to make a concerted attack with Kobyakawa before I committed everything to a fight, but it did draw out a few more enemy troops, so there'll be a little bit of a further delay as these sword troops engage with our spears. That's going to be a messy engagement with losses on both sides, but we have the morale advantage. Now my samurai was sneaking around over to the left to try and hit some of the enemies in the flanks, and their slow speed is going to be a problem because the enemy are rapidly attacking us all over the place, so they need to get into action fast. Enemy samurai are rushing down towards Kobyakawa's group, but there's a major problem. We blast them with our first rank of matchlocks, but these troops actually don't fire by rank unless you explicitly turn fire by rank on. It's not their default stance. That means we don't get the follow-up blast, and the enemy just charge right down that hill into us. I just barely advanced some of our Naginata samurai forward to try and stop them, but it's messier than it needed to be. Plus, there are arrows raining down from the enemy's bow samurai that are rapidly killing my matchlock troops. We need to get this fight going quickly and try to lock those bows down if we can. The front line engagement is getting started a little bit more as we charge forwards, routing some of the initial units and rushing out of the forest now to look for more targets. We've got plenty of leeway on our right flank there to swing around and hit the enemy even from uphill positions, so that's looking pretty good for us. Now our cavalry out behind the enemy's army did defeat that general that came to stop them, and now they can hit the enemy's bow samurai, who thankfully switched targets off of our matchlocks before they were too heavily damaged, and that's going to be a nice rear charge. They'll struggle in the melee since bow samurai are decent, but at least now they're not firing their bows, their main speciality. This unit of cav gets caught due to my bad micro. Nice little rear charge from the enemy. I'm just trying to get away from them, and we need to lock those enemy spears down with some of our own troops, and we're going to use our Naginata samurai to do it. They have the rapid advance ability, so even though they're a slower unit, they can catch up and get that rear attack, and now we'll have a favourable melee there. On the front line engagements up on the mountainside, I'm not sure if it's a favourable melee, it's hard to say. Everything's just fighting everything. We've got enemy spear samurai fighting with our sword samurai, so that theoretically is good, although the Master of Strategy mod doesn't emphasise the triangle of counters so much, so I'm not sure if that's really going to be in our favour. In other places, we've got some more definitive fights. We've got our melee troops fighting their skirmishers, and some free troops coming around for a big rear attack. You can see on the balance bar, we essentially have this at this stage, and that's going to start causing chain routes. Kobyakawa rushing around rallying the troops to give them extra morale and a bit more fighting skill with his Inspire ability, and the enemy is starting to give up. They have lots of drafted troops that don't really want to fight anyway. This general makes a last attack on our matchlocks, who just finished climbing up the mountain, and again their lack of firing by rank really reducing their combat effectiveness. Luckily we have the enemy just overwhelmed. They try and get out of there now. The general himself right at the back. You might just get away with this if he's very lucky, because the battle ends here. So that's a decisive victory. The ASO main force cut down to size. Any advantage they had from their surprise attack on us has probably been lost at this point, and now it's time to start working on turning the tables and taking our revenge. The appeal made by Eiso Michiyuji to the lords of the land had seen mixed success. The two largest clans to answer the call, the Amiko and the Saika, suffered quick defeats at sea, which crushed their enthusiasm for the naval action they would have to conduct before a land invasion could be safely made. Many joined the war on principle, but of the clans that all were looking to for an example, none made any moves. The major daimyo had more to gain in furthering their own power than reducing that of another. They were too much alike to Yoshiaki to condemn him in any meaningful way. That is all for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks to all the OfficiallyDevin patrons for funding this channel. We'll keep working against the ASO, and we're going to try and find a way to profit from these wider wars we've been drawn into in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.